The Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee says the Marshalltown fire could have been prevented if authorities in both the province and the city paid more attention to the issue of housing. Peter Monethe is from the Crisis Committee and joins us now in studio for a discussion on that tragedy that happened this past week. Peter, thank you for making time for us. I think there's an understanding even from government authorities that this was a disaster waiting to happen.
Oh, yes. Good day, Clement, and the viewers from home. Yeah, we as Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee, we think, yes, it's a disaster waiting to happen, and there will still be more if the government doesn't do something about the crisis that we are faced with in the inner city, even including at the level of a location, because Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee, we engaged with the city of Johannesburg. I think it was from 2018, where we had meetings about the dilapidated buildings in the inner city. And we were also partnering with the students because of their issues of accommodation. Their slogan was accommodation is land. So we saw the need that because we also need to use the buildings in the inner city. Then we partnered with the students. However, we have never got attention from the city of Johannesburg, even the provincial, the human settlement. What they did, we will have the meetings with them, and they will never give us a clear answer on how to go forward. Because we identified a lot of buildings in town where we are saying these buildings, they need to be fixed, need to be renovated, and people must go and be allocated those places. Because one of the reasons that was frustrating us, we were given the reason that Gauteng government or city of Johannesburg can only build 10,000 houses per financial year, which means, it's really devastating because we have a backlog of 1.2 million houses, people who are on a waiting list of Gauteng waiting list. So that's why we saw the need to approach the government. However, it fell into a blind eye where we understood, especially after this crisis, that they don't really represent the people's aspiration, but they are representing their political battles in the city of Johannesburg.
Okay, so clearly the authorities in both the province and the city haven't paid too much attention on this issue of housing, and even the proposals that you've made around taking over some of these buildings that you've identified in the city. How do you think the authorities, what do you think they can do now going forward? Because I think the president, even today during that engagement, he said what happened in Marshalltown is a wake-up call. So an expectation then from members of the public is we'll start seeing movements where the government responds to the rapid urbanization that we're seeing, particularly in the city of Johannesburg. What do you think needs to happen as a matter of urgency so that we're not dealing with the same crisis not so long from here?
Yeah, it's just bad because it's a wake-up call, but unfortunately, we have already lost 74 lives. 76 people died. It's a wake-up call for them, but those people who passed away, they won't wake up. And this is not a first time. Maybe before I answer your question of what can be done, we also remember, was it last year? Somewhere in Boysens, there is an informal settlement, more than 1,000 shacks burnt there. And that side of Maboning, next to Kwamaimai, there was also informal settlement that burnt, So this is not the first time. How can it be a wake-up call now? We know it's just a, rhetoric. However, to answer your question, what should be done? These dilapidated buildings, they must not be left to in the hands of gangsters, because we understand it's just a deal makings. It's not like they don't know that these buildings that are hijacked, who take control of those buildings. There are people, but those people they are hiding behind politics. They are not just thugs, you know. They are not your normal thugs that can mark you on the street. They are hiding behind certain politics, not only ANC politics, if I may say, but different politics as we see. I mean, the issue of coalition government in the city of Johannesburg, we know that there is multiple parties that are governing there. So people will take advantage of these buildings. They make their own researches, as much as we also did before. As I say, we went to and checked. We had a list of these buildings. However, they also make those researches, and then they take chances, you know. It's not even taking chances. They are just making a deal that, okay, I will own this one, you will own this one, you will own this.
Well, what more did you find about those buildings? Who owns them? And how do they normally, I mean, because there are people who live in these buildings, and there are people who are collecting rent from them. So what structure did you identify during your research in identifying these abandoned buildings?
It's, some of them, I mean, we came to realize that, it's different people. Some of them, I mean, are being left by private owners. They will tell you that they left before 1994. Some of them are owned by the government itself. But then they will tell you they don't have enough budget to renovate them. So they are owned by a different institution or people, you know. However, our concern in this is that there is that element where if people are living in a certain building, for example, in Hillbrow, I mean, how does it happen in the face of the government? Are they not aware that people are living in a certain building? And that building, because there is also an issue of electricity, water and electricity. Those people, they are paying, but they are not paying a full amount in some buildings. Some they don't even pay at all. That's where you find shacks are being built inside the dilapidated buildings. So at the end of the day, that's why we are saying it boils back to maladministration and the deal making of this coalition government, because at the end of the day, in our face, in public's face, it's like, yes, it's a coalition government, but behind doors, I mean, people are coming together to make such deals to say, okay, no, let's take this kind of building. I mean, it can be usable, and then if you just try to renovate and there, you know. So that's why this problem of fire, I think, we as Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee, we see that, that was the result.
Just help us understand, as the Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee, how bad is the situation of the lack of housing in and around Johannesburg and particularly Gauteng? Because we often hear, I said earlier, people are moving to town because they want to be closer to employment opportunities, but the accommodation is not affordable in town. So that's a big factor. That's why people end up being relegated to the slums. Some people end up taking risks and they're staying in buildings like what we've seen in Marshalltown. So how big is the crisis around housing in Gauteng?
I don't even have a clear answer on how can I say how big it is, but I will tell you one thing, Clement. I mean, it's better to be homeless in town than to be homeless in Soweto or in Freedom Park. I mean, in town sometimes you can find a corner on a pavement and sleep there. So at the end of the day, you know, it's not by choice. This thing, they just happen because people are really under a serious pressure. This housing crisis is real, is bigger than the way statistics shows here. Because, for example, we fought in Freedom Park, the Golden Highway communities, Freedom Park, Tembelihle, you know, Lehigh and all, El Dorado Park, all these communities, in 2016, where we were given a mega housing development, a promise of mega housing development, which is Southern Farm, in 2016. Till today, we are still waiting for that. And remember, as we were fighting in Gauteng South for that development, we were fighting because it was an urgent need. We saw that we need houses as in now. People are homeless. People are living in a very squalor conditions where, you know, there is no water, there is no sanitation. People are, and there's a lot of rapes that are happening there. So we are just frustrated out of that situation in 2016. Then we occupied. As we occupied the roads and stuff, then we were given that promise of mega housing development, which was 47,000 stands. However, till today, you'll be shocked if I can tell you, no, there's no single house that was built. We are still in that promise. Only last year, they put a certain budget, I'm not sure whether it was 15 million on the IDP. And till now, we haven't started with Southern Farm. So that is why, at the end of the day, our people time and time again become so frustrated. And we are saying, I mean, we really can't be comfortable in an abnormal situation, you know. But this, the one that happened in town right now, it's really something that we are saying as Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee, it won't end there. It's a disaster, yes, we know it was not man-made, it's a disaster. But these disasters will keep on haunting us if our government doesn't really assist. They are only interested in their political powers and, you know, this coalition government.
Have you dealt with an instance of people then occupying land illegally because housing is not being provided by the government? I mean, is that still a big issue? I mean, there was a time when there was a lot of land that was being occupied by people that were setting up homes. So as the Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee, from your observation, is this still a crisis?
Yes, it is still a crisis. I mean, Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee was built out of so-called illegal occupations. For us, it's not illegal because we are desperate for places. I mean, we have close to 50 informal settlements that subscribe to are part of Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee. So for us, you know, yes, we really occupy because of that kind of need and frustration, where we are left with no option but to move for that kind of occupation. Some of them are successful, some were not successful. Like, for example, the one that made us to occupy the streets in 2016, the Golden Highway, freeways and stuff. It was because of unsuccessful occupation. We had an occupation that was really unsuccessful, and there was a high level of police brutality there. You know, then that's where people, you know, they were angry, and then they went to the street, and then the officials like Yolindi Osesulu, Paul Mashatile, and others, Simon Mashaba, was still a mayor, came to our area, and then they said, no, we are giving you the land, we are giving you Southern Farm. And then from now, we thought in 2016, Southern Farm will be next year, which was 2017. But as I'm talking to you now, still it is not, I mean, there's no sign that is showing that.
But if the money is being allocated, why is the project not getting off the ground?
Exactly. I mean, that's our question too. We are just wondering, because the other problem that we are seeing, as I said earlier, the issue of the power dynamics, you know, where, okay, who should develop there? I mean, okay, and also it came with a certain political party, especially because now we are going to 2024 elections. People are using any crisis to campaign, you know. So, but we also realize that these things, all of them, they are not really something that we should be surprised of, because it also takes us back to the negotiations, the CODESA negotiation settlement of before 1994. You know, if we are landless, I mean, we are landless people, sometimes even the city doesn't have powers, because there is still these private lands that are being owned by certain individuals. Some of them, they are not even in South Africa as we speak. So this issue of land is very, very important, where I think the government have to look into it. You can't really say you are in power, but you don't have land, because these houses that we are fighting for, they must be built on a certain land. That land, who owns it? Because one of our problem in Southern Farm, we were told that these farm owners, some of them, they don't want to sell their farms. Some of them who are willing to sell their farms, they are exaggerating the amounts. Like it will be certain hectares, which is maybe that hectares, they can cost 10 million, for example. But the farm owner will say, you know, give me 120 million, you know, for instance. So that's why, I mean, the question of land, really, it will keep on haunting us, because at the end of the day, when we are landless like this, there is no way. Yeah. We go to the city, they will tell us, no, we don't own this. Yeah. We own
How much of this housing crisis is as a result of the political instability, in particularly the metro of Johannesburg? Because sometimes we've seen so many changes in administration. So you speak about some monies being allocated for projects, but the projects are not getting off the ground. Could it be that different administrations have different priorities? So one comes and says, we want to go with this project. The other comes and wants to change things up.
Exactly. I mean, for example, we had so many mayors. If I can take it just from last year or 2 years back, we had so many mayors. And remember, if a mayor comes in, he comes in with his or her team, you know, the MMCs and all the. So now, all the time, sometimes we will be frustrated by that. When we go to the city of Johannesburg, they will tell us that you have to wait, because for now we don't have MMC of housing until the mayor is going to announce that team. So we sometimes find ourselves where we are going to the city and then we have no one to talk to. And one thing that I can tell you, Clement, maybe fast forward to everything that I said, is that yes, people can be patient for so long, but at the end of the day, it gets out of our hands also as the leaders, you know. I remember when the strike that happened in 2016, when it happened, it was not like maybe where we gave directive as leaders to say, no, we must block the roads because we want 1, 2, and 3. It was out of now where the communities themselves, they are pushing us to say, okay, if you don't want to do 1, 2, and 3, then you must move aside, you know, then we will take over. So even now, this thing is slowly but surely boiling, because if I can tell you, in Freedom Park alone, there is so many occupation, informal settlements. Some of them are just on top of the mountain or a hill, you know, where you can see that it's not really a place where people can live there.
Yeah, well, Peter, thank you so much for coming through and talking to us about just your observations as the Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee, and how the inability for the local and provincial authorities in providing housing to South Africans